All right, so if you're able to see the PowerPoint, you can go ahead and put a thumbs up or send yes inside the chat. Okay, awesome. Let's continue. So today's lesson objectives are, we're going to recall the properties of linear functions, which we did on Tuesday. We're going to identify the slope-intercept form for a linear function, and we're going to complete something called a table of values. So on Tuesday, we looked at linear equations or linear functions that had one variable. So today we're going to put our focus more on the linear functions / equations that have two variables. And so a linear equation with two variables is an equation that can be written in three different forms. It can be written in standard form, the slope-intercept form, or point-slope form. And for this lesson, we're going to mainly focus on the slope-intercept form. And so no matter what the form of the linear equation is, it always will form a straight line when graphed. So you have a note here. So the solution or a solution of an equation, any linear equation that has two variables, the solution would be an ordered pair or a set of coordinates that are real numbers. And so, for example, we have an ordered pair for x value first and then y value second. So with this ordered pair 4, 3, my 4 is the x value and my 3 is the y value. And so 4, 3 is a solution for this particular linear equation here. 3x take away 2y equals 6. This particular linear equation is written in the standard form. This particular equation is written in the standard form. And so because the 4 value is really the x value, when you substitute the 4 and the 3 into the equation, you should get 6 on both sides. And so that's how you know if your x and y values are correct, or if your x and y values satisfy this particular linear equation. And so once again, the points that make the equation true form a straight line. And so these points are called the solution set. When we have linear equations that have two variables like x, and in most cases your two variables will be x and y, the ordered pair or your coordinates will be your x and your y values. Okay, so let's recap on the properties of the linear functions with a quick video. Let me know in the chat box if you can hear the video now once it's...
A linear function is any function that graphs to a straight line. What this means mathematically is that the function has either one or two variables with no exponents or powers. If the function has more variables, the variables must be constants or known variables for the function to remain linear function. To identify linear functions, you can create a checklist of several items the function must meet. 1. The first item the function must satisfy is that it must have either one or two real variables. If another variable is present, it must be a known variable or constant. For example, the function c equals 2 times pi times r is a linear function because only the c and r are the real variables, with the pi being a constant. 2. The second item is that none of the variables can have an exponent or power to them. They cannot be squared, cubed, or anything else. All variables must be in the numerator. 3. The third item is that the function must graph to a straight line. Any kind of curve disqualifies the function.
Okay, so that video basically wrapped up our three properties for a linear function. So a linear function can have one or two variables. The variables must not be squared, cubed, or have negative exponents. The only exponent can be 1. And the third was, right, and the third must graph to a straight line. So let's continue. So let's look at the slope-intercept form. And the reason this particular form is called the slope-intercept form is because when you are given the equation in this form, the slope and the intercept are visible in the equation, and you will see, I'll explain a little bit more what slope and intercept is. So an equation written in the form y equals mx plus b is in slope-intercept form. Now I know you see all kind of letters there, so let me explain that some more for you. Yes, thank you, Ms. Penn. This is something that you should write down. This particular form and these notes on this particular slide are very important, so you can write this down. Okay, so now I know we've been seeing the y and the x very most of the time, so let me really explain what m and b is. So in this particular form, you can see that m is the slope. So any coefficient of x, or if you remember your algebraic terms, any number in front of a letter is called a coefficient. And so m, which will be a letter, in this case it's a letter, but in most cases when you have equations in the slope-intercept form, you won't see the letter m, you will be given a number. And so whatever number is in front of x would be your slope. So remember the linear equations usually only have two variables. So the m and the b will be numbers. The x and y will stay variables. So, and the slope, all the slope really tells you is how steep the line is. And so slope usually has a lesson on its own, but just to get a broad idea, slope is just how steep a line is. Next point, you can see the y-intercept, which will be our b. So that will also be a number given in the equation. And y-intercept, if you think of the word intercept, words like, to me, when I think of the word intercept, words like intersect comes to mind, or cross, or something that interrupts. And so because it's the y-intercept, this value, when it's graphed, tells you where your line cuts the y-axis. So if your y-intercept is, let's just say, +4, your line, or the graph of your line will cut the y-axis at +4. So that's all that y-intercept is really telling us. And then finally, I represent all of the ordered pairs that make this line true, or the solution sets for the ordered pairs. So you can write this down. I'll give you another minute or two. Any questions so far on this slide? In the forthcoming examples, you will see where m and b are numbers. So y and x are really the only two variables you would see there. To answer the person who asked about emailing the assignments, well, today's assignment, you will be writing it down from the PowerPoint. But if it's any other assignments, I would usually ask you for your emails, and I will email them to you. Okay, can we move on to the next slide? Okay, I see most people are done. Okay, so next slide. Here we have 3 easy steps for when graphing linear equations. So you complete the table of values, that's your first step. And you will see how we complete a table of, or what is a table of values in the forthcoming slides. You plot the points from the table of values, and then you connect and label the points on your graph. Okay, you don't really have to write this. This is, basic, straightforward. Just remember to complete the table of values, plot the points like what we did in the first 2 lessons, and then you connect the points. And once again, these sessions are being recorded, and they will be available on the virtual learning website in a few days. So if you want to go back, you can always go back to the website and view the recording. So what is a table? A table of values is used to generate points, or your coordinates for the graph. And so these points can be plotted on the coordinate plane. A straight line is drawn through the points that creates the graph of the equation. So how do we compute this table of values? Or how do we get the values on this table? So you substitute the x value, which is usually given to you, and you use that x value to find the missing number or the y value. So let's watch a video that will explain in more detail what a table of values is, or how it looks, and how the values are generated, and then we'll do an example after.
So now if you're asked to make up a table of values, we put x on the left side of the table and y on the right side. And
sorry, what happened there? Okay, sorry.
So now if you're asked to make up a table of values, we put x on the left side of the table and y on the right side. And when we complete a table of values, what you do is you sub in values of x and determine what y is. And you can use any values you want for x, but we're going to use here -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And when we sub in, so y equals -x plus 4, we sub it in brackets. And so this is going to be y equals negative, and we're going to sub in -2 for x. Now this is understood to be -1 times -2. Negative times a negative is a positive, so this is 2 plus 4 is 6. For the next one, y equals negative, and we're going to sub in -1 this time, plus 4, and this is -1 times -1, which is positive 1, plus 4 is 5, and you should start to see the pattern here. So this will be negative times 0 plus 4, so -1 times 0 is 0, so this is just going to be 4, and so on. And so the next points, if you'd filled out your subbed in correctly, so the next one will be -1 times 1 plus 4 is 3 and 2. So show your work. And when you plot these points, the first one is -2, 6, -1, 5, 0, 4, 1, 3, and 2, 2.
Okay, so let's look at this example that's on the screen from the video. I'll definitely simplify a bit, and we will be looking at some examples. So hopefully after the examples, when I explain, you'll understand a little bit better. So here we have the function or the linear equation that was given, y equals -x plus 4. And so the table of values is really what it is a table of values. This particular table of values on this from the example is a vertical table of values, but it can be vertical or horizontal, but that's not important. However, what's really important is you have one column for your x values and you have another column for your y values. In most cases, sometimes the x values are given to you and you would just have to generate the y values. But there are some times where you can just choose your own x values and you use the x values to generate the y values. So for example, the gentleman in the video created his own x values. And so he started with -2 and went all the way to +2. So if your x is -2, to generate your y value, you just take -2 and you substitute it into the equation. So wherever you see x in the equation, you would put -2. So for -2, you substitute. So where x was, he put -2. So a negative times a negative gives me a positive, and then you add 4, and that's how he got 6. And so the first point when plotting on your graph would be -2, 6. That would be your first set of coordinates. So let's look at another example. So here's an example, and you guys can write this down as I explain as your first example. So here we have a linear equation or linear function, y equals 2x plus 5. And let's remember the slope-intercept form. This equation is in the slope-intercept form. And if you remember, the slope-intercept form said y equals mx plus b. And so remember, I told you in most cases, the m and the b values will be given to you. And so this 2 is my m value. So my slope would be 2, and -5 would be my b value. Because remember, our linear equations can only have 2 unknown variables, which is my y and my x. So that's just to sum up the slope-intercept form. And my y-intercept, which was the b value, would be -5. So whenever this graph is plotted, my graph will cross the y-axis at -5, or it would intercept my y-axis at -5. So let's look at this table of values. In this case, our x values were given to us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you remember from the video, our x values can really be any real numbers. And so to generate my y values for this, when x is 1, I just substitute 1. I just take the equation. Wherever I see x, I'm going to put 1. So I substitute 1. So now the equation becomes y equals 2 times 1, take away 5. And then you just simplify. So 2 times 1 is 2, take away 5. And y is then equal to -3. So whenever x is 1, my y is going to be equal to -3. And so you just do the same steps over and over for each different x values. So, let me give you a second to write this down. Any questions so far? You can ask in the question and answer. Okay, I saw a question. Someone asked, when you substitute x, does it always have to be 1? No. X can be any values that you want it to be. And you really and truly are only using these values to find coordinates to graph this line. So x doesn't always have to be these particular numbers. Okay, let's look at the next slide. So let's do the one for 2. So to find our y value when x is 2, you just, wherever you see x, you put 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, and then we bring back down the subtract 5, and 4 take away 5 would be -1. So our next value would be -1. And so you can continue to generate your own y values in your free time. As long as you have the equation and the x values, then you can generate. Okay, so for 3, our y value would be 1. For 4, our y value would be 3. And for 5, our y value will be 5. Any questions so far? Okay, good. I don't see any questions, so let's move on. So here would be your practice exercise. I'm going to give you a few minutes to write this down. And so you would complete this on your own time. But for right now, those of you who have questions, you can ask your questions now, and I can explain or reply whilst persons are writing this down. And so while you write, all of these questions or examples are in the slope-intercept form. And you can clearly see the slope, and you can clearly see the y-intercept. Okay, I see some questions. Okay, someone is asking a question about number 4. Okay, so number four is still in its slope-intercept form. However, we just have a fraction. And so the process is still exactly the same. You just substitute your x value, which will be -4, for wherever you see x. And so it will be -3 times -4 plus 2. And then once you simplify the top, you divide it all by 2. And whatever answer you get will be your y value. So don't try not to get confused when you see fractions. The process is still exactly the same. You're just replacing the x value with whatever is on the table to find your y value. Okay, another person asked, how do we know when the equation is in slope-intercept form? Okay, so you would know once the slope and the y-intercept is pretty obvious, and remember the slope would be the coefficient on x. So whatever number you see in the front of x, and then that would just make it your slope-intercept form. It'll just be in some form of y equals mx plus b. And so like if we look at number 3, there is really no number in front of x, but you know that if you see a variable by itself, the coefficient is 1. Any other questions? Okay, so one more quick overview. All you would be required to do for this particular exercise is to complete the table of values. And so in order to complete the table of values, you just take your x values at the top, you substitute them into the equation to generate your y value. So to generate the y value for the first example, you would take -1, replace x with -1, simplify the equation, and then that would give you your y value. And so like I said earlier, the table of values, it helps you generate the points or the coordinates, but when it's time for you to actually graph the line, and that'll be done in the next lesson. Okay, I'll give you another minute so you can write down the other part 2 to this on the next slide. Yes, when you do get a question like number 4 and 5, the steps are still the same, the process is still the same. It doesn't matter if it's a fraction or not, you still substituting the x values and solving for the y values. Yes, division is involved in number 5, that's x over 2, it's written as a fraction, and we know that fractions can also mean divide. So whatever your x value is, it'll be divided by 2, and then you add 3. Okay, one more minute, and then I'm moving to the next slide. Oh, and another good suggestion for those of you, because I know everyone doesn't write fast, so for those of you who write a little bit slower, you can learn how to screenshot if you're on your phone. I'm sure most of you know how to screenshot on your phones. But if you're not familiar with screenshotting from a computer, there's a print screen button that says PRTSC, and you usually press Control and print screen. And once you open up Word or Paint, you can just paste it right in there by pressing Control V. So if you know you're not a fast writer, then you can print screen it and saves time and less energy by writing. Okay, and the final slide will be the part 2 to your practice. So this is the part 2 to your practice. So you can also write these down or print screen this. And so with this part, you are going to create your own values, your own x values, and then you're going to generate your y values. And for those of you who weren't in the previous lessons, like I said, you can, once you write these down, you can date it and keep it in a neat folder. And then when school reopens, you can give them to your teacher so your teacher can see that you were engaged during this lockdown or quarantine. So for this one, you're going to create your own values, just like the guy in the video, and generate your y values. Also, another note for numbers 1 and 2. If you notice, numbers 1 and 2, they are in standard form. They're not in the slope-intercept form, but that's still, I don't want you to get confused. The steps are still the same. Once you have your x values, you substitute x to get the y values. And then for number 1 and 2, you would actually have to solve for y. So those x's need to be moved to the other side of the equation in order for you to get your y values. And I would hope that everyone is efficient with solving or making y the subject in this case. So my suggestion would be to make y the subject first, and then you substitute in your x values. I hope that clears up a little. And then number 3 and 4 is in the slope-intercept form. So for number 3 and 4, y is already the subject. So you just substitute in your x values. But for 1 and 2, you make y the subject by taking x and carrying it to the other side of the equation. Okay, so this will be this is our last slide for the day. So this will be the final call for any questions or Any final questions that you may have? Okay, so since most people seem to understand well, I will leave my email inside the chat box for those of you that may have additional questions as you're working, and I will try to respond to them as soon as possible. But if you come along or if you have any questions along the way, then you can email me and I can probably send you like some more YouTube links or some more practice websites where you can practice more. So I'm sending my email. 1 second. Okay, I think you can see it now. I just sent my email inside the chat box. So, and if we don't have any more questions, that concludes our lesson for today. Hope that you learned something new and it was clear enough for you to understand.
I am so happy for the Bahamas Virtual Learning website. Even though I cannot go to school, my learning does not have to stop. Every morning, I go to ministryoфeducation.com and click on the Virtual Learning Portal button. Next, I select my grade level. This learning schedule outlines my entire week. I navigate to the appropriate date. I always check the time to make sure that I am never late for classes. Then, I select the Join Now button. This directs me to a Zoom landing page. I am not the host of the session, so I will select Join as an attendee. Next, I fill out the class registration form. This is like a daily attendance. Present. Finally, I click on the link at the bottom when I am in my virtual classroom. I can ask questions in the Q&A and chat directly to the teacher. It's like having my own private tutor. If I miss a live lesson, I can come back to the page the following day and access the recording from the previous class.
Good morning, grade 7, and welcome.
Phew. But wait, there's more. I can explore all of the additional resources for that subject by clicking onto the Lesson Resources link. Here, I will find the PowerPoint from the lesson, additional lesson notes, and worksheets for practice. But the learning doesn't stop there. All of my option subjects are also available on the Virtual Learning website. To access the option subjects, I click onto an option block on the timetable and then boom, a whole menu of option subjects appear. I can access resources for computer studies, electrical, modern languages, visual and performing arts, and even cosmetology and carpentry. Want to know my secret? I download all of the resources and save them on my computer. So if the internet goes down, I still have my resources. There are even resources available for my little brother in primary school. Once mommy goes to the page for his grade level, she finds all kinds of fun and exciting videos and activities that he can use for each day of the week.
Whoa, what an adventure!
Add the silent E after the consonant, it becomes sight.
Wow, you guys thought of it all. I kind of like this virtual learning thing.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the virtual school orientation for new students. I hope that this session will be informative for you and you will enjoy and learn as much as you possibly can. I'm Ms. Johnson and I'm going to be your facilitator this morning. Now, one of the things we want to focus on is you actually being a student in the virtual environment. It's very exciting and it's very different from the actual physical classroom. So we want to walk you through a few steps that you can use that will guide you as you learn to be a virtual student. All right, so here we have the actual website that you will be using, whether you are a student who will be using the live class options. And the live classes mean you're going to go into a virtual room, you will have a teacher who is actually teaching at that particular moment, and then you have the on-demand students, and you will also have the option to have access to all of the resources, YouTube videos, various links and notes and assignments that have been posted by your teachers. And so once again, you would have to know whether or not I am a live class student or an on-demand student. Either way, on this website, you will have the option to have access to everything that we would have posted for you. So if you are a primary, preschool, secondary student, you have the option to go to any one of these links. Let's say we are in grade 12. And so you would have seen the schedule that we have here. And so they have, for example, period 1, you have the virtual learning orientation. And then for period 2, which starts at 10 o'clock, you have biology. They have the topic there for you. Period 3, 11 o'clock to 11:55, you have mathematics. They have the topics there for you, and so on and so forth. It's very detailed for you. It has the objectives of the lesson, and then it also has your learning resources, the lesson resources, whether that's a video or a PowerPoint or a worksheet. Now, one of the things I want to advise you about is if you are going to be a virtual student, there are a few tools that you need to make sure and ensure that you have. And so one of those things, first of all, is internet connection. You want to make sure that you are connected where you're not dropping off during a class, or if you are trying to get into a live classroom, you are not denied access. So you want to make sure you have a strong internet connection. Secondly, maybe you may not have a laptop or a desktop. You may have a phone that you're using or a tablet that you're using. Now, if you're using any one of those devices, you want to make sure that you are able to download any app that would allow you to access or open Word documents, PowerPoints, or any PDF that your teachers might have sent or put up on the website for you. So those things you want to make sure are in place. One, internet connection, and secondly, whatever device that you have, ensure that you have access to any one of the apps that will allow you to open up any of the resources the teachers would have placed on the website for you for your learning experience. And so one of the things that I also want to encourage you to do is to be disciplined enough to actually follow anything that your students, not your students, your teachers rather, would have put up on the website. Also, you want to make sure and check your emails. Discipline is very important as a student or being a student in the virtual environment. Not everything in the physical school where you have a teacher who is constantly saying, make sure and check your homework, make sure you did the assignments. A lot of the responsibility is going to be on you as a student. So you want to make sure that you are disciplined enough to check your emails as much as possible to see if they have sent any notes, any assignments, anything that you might have to do pre the classes that you will be joining in the virtual school, as well as completing assignments. It's not going to be where you're actually physically writing on a paper and then coming to school and turning that paper in. You want to make sure that whatever tools they would have used, whatever resources they would have used to give you that homework and assignment, you are able to attach the assignment in an email if that's where they're using. If they're using an educational platform, for instance, at Modo, you want to learn how to now submit those assignments. So aside from the virtual learning and the website, maybe you want to take 1 or 2 moments and just look up a YouTube video on how to attach an email or how to attach and submit an assignment for any one of the educational platforms that your teacher might be using. And so one of the advantages that being a virtual student in the virtual school, whether you're in a live class or on demand, is the wealth of knowledge that you have access to, the wealth of resources that you'll have access to. And so you want to make sure that you tap into that, use everything that the teachers would have put up for you, whether it's worksheets, whether it's videos or PowerPoints. And then you even have the option, I want to learn more. I want to see what else I can actually do. And we're going to have an option for you on the website for frequently asked questions. So if you're not sure on what it is that you have to do, whether it's in terms of getting into your class, whether it's in terms of accessing your resources, or even simply you want to ask your teacher a question, you want to be able to post that, and we want to make sure that we're able to answer those questions for you as accurately as possible. And so here in the virtual school, we love what we do. The teachers are exceptional. They're excited about everything that they are doing, and they make sure that what they're presenting to you is accurate and current, and something that you can relate to as well. And so you will notice that a lot of your peers would want to know why would I want to be a part of the virtual school? And simply because it gives you access from anywhere. You can be at home, you can be in your car, you could be working from another center. It doesn't matter, but it gives you access to a whole lot more than just sitting in a physical classroom would allow you. And so I hope so far that I am actually guiding you to what it is to be a virtual student at the virtual school that the Ministry of Education is offering to you. Now, if I can attempt, let's see if we can attempt to click on one of the videos and see how it would actually. So this is one for a science class, a biology class that they're doing. I've never done biology, but let's see what the videos that they might have had. So you would have clicked on the video. And it would give you the option to watch that video for as long. This video is 3 minutes and 43 seconds.
Do you agree that every living thing needs two parents to be created? This is actually incorrect. Whilst we are more familiar with sexual reproduction involving two parents, asexual reproduction only needs one parent. All the offspring are clones. They are genetically identical to one another and to their parent.
Okay, so I'll pause the video there for a second. So when it comes to as simple as watching a video, if they're giving you that, and if you're in an on-demand class where there's not an actual live teacher, I would suggest for you that you have an actual physical notebook that you have there where you can just jot information down. The reason being is when it comes to doing the worksheet or assignment, you don't want to have to be back and forth between the video or even a PowerPoint that they may be displaying for you. You want to make sure that you have access to those notes right there. So let's try what a PowerPoint would actually look like if they were to pull it up. And again, you want to make sure that you are able to download the apps that would allow you to open all of the Office documents, whether it's in Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or even Excel. You want to have access to it. And so this is what the actual PowerPoint would look like. And it's awesome because all of the resources are already prepared. So these teachers are working exceptionally hard to make sure that they're giving you everything that you need to succeed here at the virtual school. And so this is how the PowerPoint would look. Let's simply go through it and see. And so they would give you main points. You notice it's not a lot of large paragraphs that you have to read through. It's points that you would just simply take down during a class time that you can use to complete any worksheets. Or maybe some of the teachers, if you're in a live class, they may give you a quiz immediately after. So you want to learn the art of jotting down and note-taking during a particular lesson, even if it's you who's guiding yourself through that particular lesson as an on-demand student. And so I'm loving the resources that they have here. And I'm going to stop sharing that for a moment and go back to sharing our actual screen. And so being a virtual school student is awesomely more than we can ever ask for in terms of everything that they have here presented for you on the website. And so there's a portal for whether you are a parent, a teacher, other teachers who may want to just log in and get resources for their students during this particular time where we cannot sit in a physical classroom. And so teachers, you would have the option of going through other resources, picking through what you can use with your students, what you may not be able to apply to your students now, you can use something else. And we have every particular subject, all of the core subjects are there. All of the most of the option subjects are there for you to get resources for and use. So let's look at grade 7 again. They have the schedule there. They have the topics there and resources. And so the website was well built for persons who just need to get the resources to their students or for themselves to keep current with everything that's going on in terms of the curriculum and meeting the curriculum demands by the end of the school term. I'm watching my time. I think I have about a minute left. And so I hope that this particular time of orientation was awesome for you and an opportunity for you to be guided through what a virtual student is and how you are to behave as a virtual student. And so just remember the tools that you need to make sure you always have in place is a strong internet connection. Those apps would allow you to download your assignments, your worksheets. That could be in Word, in PowerPoint, or even if your teacher just sends a PDF of the notes, you want to be able to access and open that. And so to have the best experience that you can have as a virtual student, whether you are having your live classes or you're an on-demand student, we just want to make sure that you are well prepared and enjoy your experience as a virtual student here at the Virtual School Bahamas. It's been a wonderful time with you. And if you have any questions, once again, you can post it on the website or you can contact any one of our administrators at the virtual school. I'm Ms. Johnson, and I hope you enjoyed the session.
I am so happy for the Bahamas Virtual Learning website. Even though I cannot go to school, my learning does not have to stop. Every morning, I go to ministryofeducation.com and click on the Virtual Learning Portal button. Next, I select my grade level. This learning schedule outlines my entire week. I navigate to the appropriate day. I always check the time to make sure that I am never late for classes. Then, I select the Join Now button. This directs me to a Zoom landing page. I am not the host of the session, so I will select Join as an attendee. Next, I fill out the class registration form. This is like a daily attendance. Present. Finally, I click on the link at the bottom when I am in my virtual classroom. I can ask questions in the Q&A and chat directly to the teacher. It's like having my own private tutor. If I miss a live lesson, I can come back to the page the following day and access the recording from the previous class.
Good morning, grade 7, and welcome.
Phew. But wait, there's more. I can explore all of the additional resources for that subject by clicking onto the Lesson Resources link. Here, I will find the PowerPoint from the lesson, additional lesson notes, and worksheets for practice. But the learning doesn't stop there. All of my option subjects are also available on the Virtual Learning website. To access the option subjects, I click onto an option block on the timetable and then boom, a whole menu of option subjects appear. I can access resources for computer studies, electrical, modern languages, visual and performing arts, and even cosmetology and carpentry. Want to know my secret? I download all of the resources and save them on my computer. So if the internet goes down, I still have my resources. There are even resources available for my little brother in primary school. Once mommy goes to the page for his grade level, she finds all kinds of fun and exciting videos and activities that he can use for each day of the week.
Whoa, what an adventure!
Add the silent E after the consonant, it becomes sight.
Wow, you guys thought of it all. I kind of like this virtual learning thing.